Hello. Today's lesson is the introduction of compound inequalities. So, of course, compound meaning multiple. We are going to split this lesson into 2 days just to make sure that you are comfortable with the pace and that you understand it. So, our main goals are to solve pairs of inequalities. So we'll go with some simple inequalities, but each problem is going to have two to solve. And then for your graph, you're going to have one number line per problem, but you are going to have two sets of inequalities on the number line. And I will show you how to do those. And the third goal, you're going to be writing the interval notation, but the interval notation is going to be for a pair of numbers. So nothing too new, just adding an inequality per problem. So there are situations that you're going to run into in math where x, or your variable, can be in two different categories. So that's where the or comes into. So for our first example, we have x is less than 3 or x is greater than 8. So that means our answer can be anything less than 3 or anything greater than 8. So if I had our number line here, and I actually provided number lines for you on your assignments, or at least a spot for them, I think. So I just threw number line 1 through 9, and we could look at this as, all right, x is less than 3, so that's an empty circle, and we are shading to the left all the way to negative infinity. And we also have the or x is greater than 8. So we're going to shade from 8 to positive infinity. So that means that there are basically certain numbers that it can't be, but there are numbers that go less than 3 or greater than 8. Because we're using the same variable, x, for these problems, that's why we can put them on the same number line. Okay, we are going to practice our interval notation. We're going to add a slight complication. So if we have our number line, I think most of your number lines I advise counting by 2s now just to make your life easier. So we have our number line. We're going to go -4, -2, 0, 2, 4, and 6. We're going to graph this. X is less than -2. And shade it this way. Or x is greater than 5. So here I have a filled in circle, and I'm shading towards infinity. So it either has to be less than -2 or greater than or equal to positive 5. So our interval notation is going to have two sets, because if we read from left to right, we have negative infinity over here. So our first set is going to be, and we have a parentheses, a negative infinity to positive -2. And for our second one, what we're going to do is we look and we see a greater than or equal to 5. So we are going to put that in a bracket. So we have our bracket instead of parentheses, 5, comma, positive infinity. And then the infinities go in parentheses, because over here we go all the way to parentheses. So the only change here is the fact that this empty circle shows that it is a parentheses, and the filled in circle will have a bracket next to the number. We're going to keep infinity as a parentheses just because that number goes on forever. But the interval notation is going to have a little bit of difference, whether it's an empty circle or a filled in circle. So that way people are clear whether it's greater than or equal to. I'm sorry that explanation was a little bit choppy. All right, so examples. We have x is less than -3. We'll probably draw a number line like this again. So filled in circle at -3, shaded towards -infinity. So the interval notation would be parentheses -infinity to comma -3. And because it's a filled in circle, it would be a bracket. Then or x is greater than 4, filled in circle at 4, shaded to the right towards infinity. So because it's an empty circle at 4, I would say parentheses 4 comma infinity. And we'll do the opposite here. I can start my number line at -2. That should not. 2, 4, 6, 8. X is less than 1. Shade left. So I have a -infinity parentheses comma 1 parentheses because it's an empty circle. And then or x is greater than or equal to 6, filled in circle. So I have a bracket 6 comma infinity parentheses. So the infinities have parentheses. The only time we're doing the bracket is when we have a number with a filled in circle on it. So if you come to a problem like this, we are actually just solving our inequalities, except there are two of them. So here on the left, subtract 5 from both sides. You have 2x is less than -6. Divide both sides by +2. So we have x is less than -3. Or over here, add 4 to both sides, add 4. 7x is greater than 14. Divide both sides by 7. X is greater than 2. So now we have our two answers. We can make our number line. -4, -2, 0, 2, 4, 6. We have an empty circle at -3, and we're showing that x is less than -3, or x is greater than 2. So for our interval notation, on the left we have -infinity to -3. And notice these are both parentheses because they're empty circles, or parentheses 2 to infinity. So you will get 3 points per problem, 1 point for the inequalities, 1 point for the number line, and 1 point for the interval notation. All right, one more example, just to show that some of these can get a little more complicated. Here we have to distribute. We have 6x plus 2 less than or equal to -4, and then or 4x minus 20 greater than or equal to 12. This turns into 6x less than or equal to -6. X is less than or equal to -1. And then or 4x is greater than or equal to 32. X is greater than or equal to 8. So my number line, I would probably start at negative 2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So less than or equal to negative 1, greater than or equal to 8. And then for my notation, so remember we have negative infinity here. We have positive infinity way down here. We would have negative infinity to negative 1 bracket, filled in circle means bracket, or bracket 8 to infinity, parentheses. If on your assignment, if you had put infinity in a bracket, I would accept that. But for your actual numbers, like the negative 1 and the 8, you're really going to want to have the correct bracket or parentheses. And then one more reminder, for some of these problems, you are going to be dividing both sides by a negative. And if you divide both sides by a negative, make sure that you have flipped your inequality symbol. And on your number line, if you don't have a gap in the middle that means you have made a mistake. So go ahead and check that. Good luck on your assignment.